They wanted me to tell the people this. What you did for a dying boy with a small group of people, you can do for a dying planet with a large group of people. So we touched Evan with our physical bodies. We used our energy fields to infuse his energy field. Cups of water, the liquid went into his body. He came back to life. He's fully engaged. He does have his brain, that little bit. But other than that, his whole body is perfect. So I said, well, what do you mean? And they said that this grid system that we are encased in is collapsing. It's changing. Something's happening rapidly to move us from the world of absolute humanness. This is hard. They wanted us to understand that we're part of that system and that we can do for the Earth grid what we did for Evan. So they start talking about Fire the Grid. Now they show me all sorts of stuff. They show me an Ouroboros. They're showing me Chichen Itza, which I'm like, Chicha what? Thank God for Google, because I could put things in and they would pop up and I'd say, oh yeah, that's what you just showed me. So to me, everything was this learning curve of getting a piece of information and trying to figure out what the heck it was. And I didn't want to read anybody else's books because I was having communication. And if I read somebody else's book, I was afraid I would put their words in my mouth and then it wouldn't be authentic. So these beings were coming at all, usually 3 o'clock in the morning. They loved 3 o'clock in the morning. So one example was 3 o'clock in the morning and I get this, Shelley, what? And there's this massive blue tunnel coming out of my chest. And I'm like, wow, okay. And they're like, so my essence, or the part of me that's eternal, started to come up and go down the tunnel. And I later learned this is called astral traveling, where part of your body separates and goes down. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. And then as soon as my brain would connect and go, wait, now you don't know where this goes. You're back in your body. You're completely back in the human, and then you'd hear clear as day, you can't get there through your mind. So this is not just for me. This is for every single one of us on the planet. These stories are our stories. These are the things that we can do. So they talked about Fire the Grid. They explained to us that every one of us is a hexagon on this grid. And the hexagon in the very beginning, when I first started to see it, looked like it was a frosted straw. So now you gotta understand that it's coming from your own ability to perceive and conceive of what's going on. So I saw a hexagonical straw. To me, that's what made the most sense. It was frosted, and there was a photon of light inside of that straw. And what I discovered was when you were happy and grateful, the little photon was going wing, 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 and it was flying around in that little hexagon and pulsing the energy grid. And when it did, the liquid light that this little photon made inside the frosted straw would flood out 1,000 hexagons. And I was like, cool. And they called it flooding the junctures, because your hexagon and my hexagon are right next to each other. Now, just because we're in the room doesn't mean that our hexagons are next to each other on the grid. Like, this is human proximity as we sit here. But our hexagons could be in different quadrants of the global hexagonal grid. But every time one of us pulses joy and gratitude, we flood the junctures and 1,000 hexagons are touched. And it doesn't matter how small it is. You find gratitude for the toilet. You find gratitude for a cup of water. You turn a tap, you put water and you get water, a comfortable couch, clean clothes, somebody that loves you, the smallest things. And you just remember to say thank you. So when you're having a shitty day and everything seems that it's just too much, the smallest gratitude for the smallest human truth floods the hexagons. If you wallow in your crap, hey, I know all about it. you're drawing from that grid?
So I'm having tons of experiences. They're explaining to me that the grid is collapsing, that it needs to be infused. They're explaining what we are as spiritual beings in these suits and what we can do. And they're talking about firing the earth grid. So they give me a date. They give me symbols. So these symbols here on my arm, and I'm sure she'll put them up somewhere so that you can see them better. But these symbols, they told me I sent them back from the future. So my future self sent these symbols back. And they said the symbols are to be used everywhere because they're a code. And that the code in our system, people would see them and just have a sense of, yeah, this is real. I don't know why I believe this, but there's something real about it because it's a truth code. They gave me a little crystal that they told me I could wear. That was a truth amplifier. So when I spoke truth, and I'm talking to 500 people, those of us that don't want to believe, that's fine. I don't have any problems with that anymore. If you feel truth in this, then help, participate, share your light with the project. So what they wanted us to do was come together. They wanted us to create a mass of humans such as the world has never seen. And they wanted us to come together. Now, I think like 98 countries participated. We don't know how many hundreds of millions of people participated, but it was all based on these beings telling me what we were, how we could help, how we could be present for these shifts in time. They called it Fire the Grid, and they started to set up the dynamics, what the symbols look like, what time to do it. So 11:11 was the time of day that they said come together at 11:11 GMT. Now GMT is Greenwich Mean Time. So Greenwich Mean Time is the clock in Greenwich, England. So at 11:11 Greenwich Mean Time, in Nova Scotia, I think it was 7:11 in the morning. So we had people in 98 countries all sitting down at the exact same time to pulse the grid with light and love and the things you love about being a human. They talked about meditation and prayer. They said if you meditate, meditate, but only if it brings you joy. They talked about prayer. If you pray and it brings you joy. But if you're doing it out of some sort of obligatory, oh, that's what my mother taught me or that's what my father taught me, and it didn't relate to anything that you felt, then what they wanted you to do was sit with your joy of being a human. And we're back to your ice cream cone or, playing with your grandchildren or whatever joy was your favorite joy. And then take that joy and say thank you. And every time you say something in threes, I call it the 1-2 punch. It's a power place whenever we talk about things in threes. So thank you, thank you, thank you really lets the universe know I didn't make a mistake here. I am fully in gratitude for this happening. So I end up trying to find somebody to help me. That's where the story's going. I try to get somebody to help me. So I'm going to different spiritual people, different churches. Can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? And my mother comes and says to me, there's a spiritual convention in Montreal and it lasts for 2 weeks and every spiritual person you could think of is going to be there. Maybe somebody could help you. And I leave it and I leave it and I leave it because I don't want to go. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be part of this. This is crazy, but it's my life and it's real. What do I do? You're there with your two hands going. So I said to my mother, it was 2 days before the trip. I said, well, if there's still room in the car and if the cheap hotel rooms are still there, I'll go. Thinking I am so friggin' lucky because there's going to be no room in the car and there's going to be no cheap hotel room. So I'm off the hook. And there's a hotel because somebody canceled and now I got the cheap room. And the woman says, I'll take you. I got room in my car to take you. Shit. Yeah, now I gotta go. So I get in the car and I pack up and the two people I'm going with are, I'm like woo-woo. Everybody's crazy but me. Why doesn't anybody else think this is crazy? Anyway, off I go to Montreal to this event and I start. So I get out of the car and I go to the event and pretty much all the big wigs in the spiritual community are there. And I'm going, hey, I got this great project. Extraterrestrials told me how to do it. And like, do you want to take this project and do it? And how about you? And how about you? And how about Emoto was there that weekend. So that was awesome because I got to speak to him about it. And he's like, oh, well, this is a very special gift. I'm like, this is not a gift. This is a pain in the ass. So anyway, I'm going from person to person to person, trying to get somebody to help me with this program or this Fire the Grid, And nobody's really interested. And I'm like, how could you not be interested? All you guys are like spiritual woo-woo people. How come you're not interested? But nobody was. So several days had passed, and I went into Stephen Greer was speaking. And Stephen Greer was kind of the ET guru in my books. And that was the one my mother had actually said, oh, maybe Stephen Greer will help you. And I'm like, I don't think anybody's going to want to do this, but whatever. So I march my ass up, and here's Stephen sitting in the chair. And I'm like, okay, so a bunch of ET came down, and they helped me, and they did this, and they did this, and then did. And he goes, uh-huh. And I said, so everybody thinks it's all about God and stuff, but it's not about God. It's about extraterrestrials and energy. And he goes, uh-huh. And I'm looking at him and go, why do you keep saying that? He goes, okay. He says, so who do you think made the extraterrestrials and the energy? I went, God? And he goes, ding dong, you got it. And here he was, this ET guru. So I was expecting ET kind of communication, and he had put God in the mix. Well, this was like a smack me in the forehead. Oh my God, God is part of this. This made so much sense, but this was the first time that this had made sense. So he says to me, okay, after I finish my talk, come with me and we'll go have some coffee and talk about your project. I said, it's not my project, it's your project. And he was like, no, this is your project. So we go off to have coffee, and he brings with him this really beautiful blonde-haired woman, and he says, this is my assistant, and she's here to listen in. So I start the project again. I tell him what I've seen. I told him what's happened. I told him about the kid, and Annie is sitting there. That was her name. And she's sitting there, and her eyes are like saucers, because I'm like, oh, another one of those woo-woo people who believes all this. Hard to believe that you don't believe. So anyway, Annie gets kind of emotional, and I'm looking at her. I said, what's going on for you? And she said, well, 15 years ago, an angel came and told me that 1 hour of time would change the course of humanity, and that somebody was coming with a project, that I would help with the project. And you're her. And I said, no, it's not me. It's really not. So anyway, I spent some time with her. I spent some time with Stephen. We talked. I learned. I grew. I decided I'm not doing this. Another one of those. I'm not doing this. So I'm going back to Nova Scotia. Thanks for the education. You're all, very sweet people, but you're all crazy. I'm telling you, it was always my go-to. So I went home. And Annie started calling me, and she's saying, you have to do this project, you have to do this project. I was like, no, I don't have to do anything. I'm not interested. This is out of my comfort zone, and I just assume this all just go away. And then at one point she called, and she set me straight, because she said, you owe a debt of gratitude to these beings. Every morning you wake up and kiss your child. Every day you have a life with your baby. And she said, and these beings have asked you to do something and you won't do it? What do you say? So I said, yes. Okay, I'll do it. So then her husband, at the time, her partner, and her started working on the project. So I would send them pieces of information. I would send them the symbols. I would send them the writing. Telling them what I knew, and we started to build the website the way the beings were telling me. So nothing about that website, nothing about that project came from me. The beings would tell me, and then I would tell them, and we would make it happen. Now at that point, Bradfield had a whole bunch of music, and what I discovered was that the music had tones in it, and the tones spoke to me. So you heard la 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 la, right? I heard ping ting ting pong ting ta. I was like, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That the machine was making these noises, and under the noises was an understanding. Put this symbol here, put this symbol here, do this with this. So this music was encoded. It was just the most amazing thing. And so the music that was encoded, I could get the information from the music. But what I discovered was that when other people listened to the music, they had a level up. They had an awakening. There was opening, because the music was speaking to me in supernatural language. That music for you, the listener, was also supernatural language. What I heard from it and what other people heard from it was different, but it was happening. It was happening in real time. So he had 16 different albums. And at that time, he had given me a bunch of the albums because he said, listen and see if there's code in anything else. Well, why wouldn't there be? So I started listening to his music, and I was like, oh, this music is coded because there was instructions. And oh, this music is coded because there was instructions. So every piece of instruction I got from his music, that music was then powerful for other listeners. So the beings started talking about the fact that if you had autism, they called autism the immortals. They said autism is to stunt the immortals, which was interesting, but they said that this music would benefit children and adults with autism, and that touch and pulling your hands off their body would help with this autistic stunting of the energy of that being. And the other thing, so listening to this music, sweeping the hands off the body in a massage type of way, and water. So get these kids and these people in water. And if you could get them in water and listen to this music, it was really beneficial. But it was beneficial for everybody that listened to the music. So they're building the site, they're doing all this stuff, and I'm starting to hear music at night, and I think my kids are up. And I'm like, what are you doing out of bed? And I'm coming downstairs, nobody's up, and I'm hearing full symphony of music. I'm like, oh, I recognize that song. And then I'd hear the name of the title, and I'd mark it down, and then I'd hear number 1, number 7, number 4, number 3. And so I'm writing down the words, and I'm writing down the numbers, and they said, tell Bradfield to put this music together in this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they said, he already has the beginning and he already has the end. Tell him to put these songs in between and make an album. And in that album was instructions for me about what to do next. So I put all the music together. I called him and I said, look, you got to put this music together this way. And the first thing he said was, how come God keeps asking poor people to do something for free? I said, I don't know, but it's us. You're making it, I'm hearing it, she's singing it. She was the singer, he was the composer, I was the mouthpiece. Well, Gabby. So anyway, all the music came together, and he finally said, fine, because originally he told me, this doesn't go together. He actually called it a career suicide. He said, if I put this music together and make an album like this, he said it's career suicide because none of it goes together. I said, do it or don't do it. I don't give a shit. I got no more time. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. So I put the music together on a CD so I could listen to it the way it was supposed to be listened. And sure enough, it was filled with all the instructions. So he calls me and he says, fine, I'm putting the music together. I'm going to create the album. He said, would you write me a little paragraph to put inside the book saying why I did it? I ended up writing 28 pages. And it's now a book and an album. But it was the #1 best-selling album of 2007. The album was Light and Love. You can still buy that album. It has a booklet in it that I wrote the booklet. And that was one of those things that just came to. And I don't know how else to describe it. It comes down through your body and comes out of your mouth. Or it comes down through your body and comes out of your fingers. So when he asked me to write the book, it just came. It just poured right out of me. I didn't even edit it. Just type, 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 type. And what was one paragraph ended up being 25 pages or 28 pages, which is in that album. It's a little booklet. And he was blown away. Well, we're always blown away when you get instructions that actually work. It's pretty incredible. So anyway, now the site is built, and everything's done. The music's getting done, and I'm sure the time frame is all mashy in there a little bit. But Bradfield calls me and he says, "Okay, the site is live. Everything's working. It's exactly the way you said to do it. And now what do?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know what we're supposed to do." So anyway, I said, "Okay, I'm going to ask, I guess, what we're supposed to do." So I sat down at the kitchen table, and in all the reverence I have, as you can tell, I went, "Okay, God," or whatever the hell you are, "I did it. It's all done. It's all laid out. It's all exactly the way you said. Bring it on. Let's do this thing." And of course, I'm laughing because it's about 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening. And no sooner do I do this, ta-da, bring it on thing, the phone rings. And it's George Noory from California. And, well, it's not him, it's his assistant. And he says, "Yeah, I'm the assistant for George Noory in California. It's the world's largest paranormal radio show." And I'm like, okay, because I didn't know who it was. And he goes, "Well, people are, covet these spots. People want to be on our radio show." And I'm like, okay. "Why are you calling me?" And he says, "Well, we heard about you." "Well, how could you hear about me? I haven't done anything yet. I mean, I built a website." And I even made a joke. I said, "Well, that's great. You tell your 10 friends and I'll tell my 10 friends. And at the end, we'll have 100 friends." So anyway, he says, "Well, George Noory wants you to be on his radio show." And again, I'm going, "Oh yeah, in 3 months' time, you'll pencil me in." I said, "Okay, so when do you want to do that?" And he said, Tonight we'll call you back at 2 a.m. your time," which was 10 in California. And I said, "What?" "Yeah," he says, "somebody canceled and we want you." Okay, fine. What was I going to say? Okay, fine. So he said, "Okay, we'll call you back at 2 a.m. your time and you'll do the interview with George and it'll last an hour or whatever it was, and then we'll be done. Thank you very much." So I hung up the phone and I did this and I was like, okay, that was a little too fast. So obviously when you say "bring it on," it gets brought on. So anyway, I was like, okay, fine. So I started talking to the beings out loud. As crazy as it seemed, I was like, "Okay, guys, you got an audience. It's 25 million people. You got an audience and I have no idea what to say. So you best be jumping in here and having something to say." And at that point, I had learned enough that people had told me that I was channeling or I was having information coming from this. I still didn't understand channeling. I didn't really understand even why I was getting the information, except it was my job. I had agreed to do this job. And it looked more like this. That's how I felt I was doing this job. Anyway, here I was. George Noory was going to call. So I sat on my couch. Now they had been teaching me to meditate, the beings had. And I had mostly meditated in the water, in the bathtub. And I would start doing these little spirals. And the next thing I know, I'm like, oh, and I'm having some incredible experience in the bathtub. And it was amazing. So I went and sat on the couch. And I said again, "George Noory, 25 million people, hello, you better have something to say or I'm going to look like an idiot." So I sat on the couch and I was there for probably the 4 hours, just kind of making noises. I had visions of this 25 million people and I had nothing to say. So he calls and the interview just went smooth as silk. You'd swear I had been speaking to people my whole life. So George is fascinated. He thinks it's wonderful. I do the interview and Fire the Grid is born. And not only born, blows up. We can't keep the site up. We had no money. We had no money. We had no supporters. We had no, donations. We had nothing. And so Bradfield goes into this holy God, and he starts doing these magic little things where you split a site and you put it off to other sites. And I don't even know what he did, but he managed to keep this thing alive, because now we were like bombarded. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails, people logging on. The beings are still giving me information. They're still telling me what to do. Right now, as a matter of fact, my right ear is on fire, which is always my indication that we got a room full of beings, because you want to stick your finger in there and scratch your brain. So these beings are coming, the site is built, everything's happening. It is December, January. Yeah, it's December of 2006. This thing is blowing up, it's taking off, and these beings want me to travel. And they want me to go from community to community, just like this. Sometimes there was 5 or 6 people that I would speak to in a group, sometimes 500 or 600 people. It was just like this. It was just a conversation. So they wanted me to travel. So if you wanted me to come, you would call one of the coordinators. Now there were some people helping. You call these coordinators and you'd say, yeah, can you get Shelley here? We'd like to have her speak at our church or our function or whatever. And I was to travel and speak for free. And I did. I never got paid 5 cents. Nobody in our team got paid 5 cents. The deal was you get me there. So if you had some people who could pay to get me a flight to your community, and then somebody had to host me. One night I slept with five cats, 2 dogs, and a hamster on the floor on a futon. And then the next day I was in a multi-million-dollar condominium on the beach somewhere. So it was the full range of experiences, but it was with honor and gratitude that I was thankful to have a place to stay and somebody supporting a conversation somewhere. So I started traveling all over Canada and the United States. We had a big European trip booked, but to me it was all so overwhelming. It was crazy. And when I spoke, I vibrated. That energy that came down through me when I was trying to share stories and talk about the things that the beings wanted you to know, it was intense. It was physically intense. My body would vibrate. My brain would just get mushy. And the human part of me would kind of step out. And this is part of the issue with us as humans dealing with our spirituality, is because there's a lot of physical things that happen to our bodies when we connect to this energy field. And I guess that's why so many people have books written about learning to ground your body, learning to center yourself, learning to run your energy in certain ways with Reiki and different modalities. The beings are still talking about this project, Fire the Grid, and that's why we're doing this today, is because each Fire the Grid brings something new.
So they gave us 3 dates the last time around. 2007, 2009, 2011. Now, I thought 2011 was going to be the end of it, and I thought I was free from ever having to do this again. So Bradfield and Annie did their piece. We set it all up. We got George Norrie involved. We had this huge event. Everything was awesome. We flooded the grid. I was like, yay, I'm done with this. But that has not been what's happened. More and more people are waking up to these truths, and they need support to walk into it. They need support to say yes to these truths so that more and more people can get off the fence. There is something happening on this planet for us. It is not happening to us. It is happening for us. And we, as people who are awakened form, people who are saying, yes, I know there's something more than this. We are in a unique position to say, yes, I want to play in the new field. So Fire the Grid was a 3-part series, 2007, 2009, 2011. Now, as you practiced firing the grid, so firing the grid could be meditation, prayer, or seeking out your joy, living it fully without judgment, and saying thank you. So what they showed me was some guy named Joe, and he's practicing high frequency, he's practicing doing something positive. And when he hits, at the fair, when you come down with the hammer and you hit the thing and the bell goes up and goes ding. Okay, so when some of us hit the hammer down, our little bell only goes beep. It doesn't get all the way up to be binged, right? So Joe's practicing being high frequency. He's practicing saying thank you, but he's not quite there because he's not like, this can't be real. Is this real? This is crazy. So when he hits his little joy dinger and it only kind of goes beep instead of all the way up. Now when you are practicing your project, I don't have any trouble. I know this is real. I'm so connected. I'm like, and when you hit that hammer, man, she goes boing and she smacks the bell. So what happens is you flood your hexagon, which floods to the 1,000 hexagons, and Joe is in the middle there going, yeah, because you facilitate him. Your true faith that's unwavering helps Joe get up to hit the bell. So the next time another project comes around, it's like, yep, and it hits the bell. So what the beings said was they were capturing our signatures. They wanted to know where we were and how many we were. So it makes me wonder, are they going to come and get us? You got a really big spaceship and you're coming to get us? And these are things I just don't know. All I know is that once you have your signature captured, then you start to be part of this collective. And we are the ones that are going to shift us out of this. And you don't have to have any, I always say you don't have to sign anything, you don't have to spend any money, you don't have to join a cult, or you don't have to sign up for anything, you just have to be present. And when you're present, then you can be defined as somebody who's choosing another path. So this is what this capturing of the signatures are. We have a vote. There's a vote coming, February 21st, 2023. And it's kind of like the signature thing, where you hit the bell and say, yes, I'm in. I'm in. I want a different world. I want something peaceful and calm and joyful. I want my entire suit to be built for pleasure and have pleasure. They told me that no man can be truly satiated. They're sitting there eating their steak, really good. But no man can be truly satiated while another man goes hungry. So that is the facts of life, because in the back of your head, there's always somebody who doesn't have any. So our project at this point is that we bring Maslow's hierarchy of needs into effect for every living creature on the planet. And until we have that, we don't go looking for more glorification or more rock monuments or more money and things that don't matter. We have people to feed and care for. We have to turn from our abundant lives and help somebody else. This is where we are right now. It's kind of the number one thing to be doing. And when you do, you say thank you, thank you, thank you. You level up, the grid gets happier and juicier, and things are happening, and these are the positive things out of the Fire the Grid project. So what do they want? Why are they here now? Why is it en masse so huge? Because it is. Everybody in this room knows it. Everybody who knows what I'm talking about knows it. Something's coming. So what is it they want? They want to ease our way. So they explained to me that Earth and everything that we know to be true, this is not the first incarnation of Earth and everything we know to be true about it. That this is the fourth field. Everybody's talking about 5D versus 3D and these types of things. I don't understand those words, and I don't completely understand what people are talking about. All I can do is tell you what I know. So the Hopi Indians have talked about this since the dawn of time, that the Earth would get 7 chances to anchor itself as a playground or as a field or an education center, because Earth and everything we know to be true is the greatest education center in the cosmos. These suits, because we have emotions, are the greatest teaching tools in the cosmos. It's like we're the Harvard of the cosmos, or the, I don't know, in Canada it's like McGill or Dalhousie or something, but this university, this playground field, we want to anchor it so that all beings from the future can still come and play here. So they can come and have experiences, so they can come and be informed. Because when they're out in the cosmos, well, you're a pure omnipotent force. There's really no great learning happening. You can do anything. Oh, I'm going to build a planet. Oh, I'm going to build a universe. Oh, and you're an omnipotent force that can do anything. There's no real great experiencing. Well, you don't have a body for one. I'm sure you're all used to little orbs. These little orbs are beings without a body going, what are you guys doing? That's really cool. I wish I had a suit. I wish I had a body. Cute little story. When I was trying to figure out how to be attached to this energy, how could I not be so unhappy about it? So I went to this woman, she was a yogi, and I told her, I said, I'm so sad, I don't want to be here, I just want to go home. And she's like, don't you know how valuable and important you are? And I'm like, no, I don't. And now how many are like me, especially right now? So she said, I'm going to tell you how challenging it is for a soul to get into a suit. And I'm sure it's a story. I don't think it was a real story, but the story went like this, that a soul being decides it wants to come to Earth and have a life experience. So it gets in line, and it's at the front of the line, and there's billions lined up behind it. So for every one of us, there's billions lined up behind you waiting for your suit. I'll take it if you don't want it. Walk-ins or whatever they call them. So anyway, the soul being goes, yeehaw, I'm going to Earth. And it jumps off and it dives down into the ocean and it swims around for 7 days. And then somebody takes one of those orange life rings off a boat and it throws that into the ocean and it floats around for 7 days. So we got a being floating, we got an orange ring floating, everybody's floating around. Now if the being can find the orange life ring, and if it can come up through without touching the sides, it gets to stay. So no matter what kind of suit you got, no matter what part of the world you live in, you got a suit. And there's a billion waiting to have it. So yippee, you got a suit. And I remember looking at her, I go, big deal. Because I was still struggling with, yeah, but my life sucks. I want it to not suck. And this is where manifesting comes into, if your life sucks, if you don't like something about your life, change it. Anyway, so the little soul being gets up through the ring, you get a suit, you got a suit, now you're having a life experience. But what we want is that Earth is anchored so that every soul being that wants a life experience can come. So the Hopis talk about the seven attempts to anchor the planetary field. We've been through the first one, chaos, destruction, it died. We've been through the second and the third, chaos, destruction, it died. The reason we can't find Atlantis hair is because it was in the third field. It was what destroyed us in the third field. We are now in the fourth field. It's not going to work. Your mission was a failure. We have not been successful in anchoring the field. So this one is going to break up into chaos and destruction, and we're going to have a fifth field. Now, a lot of people call it 5D. You're going to go from 3D to 5D. You're still going to be 3D. It's not a 5D is a different thing. It's still a 3D world, but it is the fifth field. It's the fifth attempt that we've made to anchor it. And now my understanding is that every time a field collapsed, the ancients or the elders from different tribes would be transported to the new field to start the playing game over again. And this is the first time that will be different. It's more than those people. We can all go this time. And we don't have to start down in caveman chipping chipping rocks, trying to show the extraterrestrials on the rocks, right? Or up in the fields of Nazca, so that you can see the truth of extraterrestrial interaction with our field. We don't have to go back to that. When we make the shift, we're going to do it with full consciousness. Now, I do believe we're going to have some time where we're going to be a little bit confused as we try to navigate that new field as we first get there. But I guess that's way jumping ahead of where I am, because right now we're at the part that what are we? Why are we here? And what do these beings want for us? So these beings want to ease our way.